Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. How rapid testing in schools could help bring COVID-19 cases down. Also,
they just don't have the time, and you just sort of take what you can get. Itsy bitsy spider.
The shocking spike in new moms needing mental health support and why they're waiting so long to get it. And
68 Dart.
He has a thing for vintage cars and a reality TV show because of it. So what's behind this BC man's decision to downsize his collection?
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. New moms in BC are facing long wait lists for mental health support after giving birth. And while postpartum depression is generally a challenge, it's been amplified with pandemic restrictions keeping people isolated. As Belle Puri tells us, the surge in demand has made help becoming a lot harder to find.
The itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout.
It's been a rough road for baby Clark's mum.
How do you tell someone I'm having images in my mind of purposely hurting our child?
The problem started well before Clark was born. News of the pregnancy came in the middle of BC's first COVID-19 lockdown.
You start to get your appointments and everything suddenly becomes, all right, we're going to be doing a phone call.
Pandemic restrictions led to isolation, led to anxiety.
I was getting so stressed.
The first time mom was referred to BC Women's Hospital for prenatal anxiety treatment weeks before her delivery date. The wait list was 4 months long. A pandemic increase in postpartum depression has stretched already limited resources even thinner.
So we like to keep our wait list under 3 weeks. At one point in June, we were at about 13 weeks.
At St. Paul's Hospital, new referrals have more than doubled to nearly 45 a month. To increase capacity, longer-term therapy has been reduced.
The other thing is we're offering doctor-to-doctor consults. So rather than a full-on referral, they can now ask to simply have a discussion with one of the docs rather than have the patient seen.
Calls to helplines have gone up.
And we noticed that there was a lot more longer calls. And I would say that the quality of the calls was maybe heavier.
In 50 years, the Pacific Postpartum Support Society has seen nothing like it. Between April 2020 and last March, the Society got 1,000 more calls than usual. And the amount of those calls lasting longer than an hour jumped almost 200%. As well, the Society has replaced its 9 in-person groups with 20 online groups. And the wait to get in is still 4 weeks. BC's Health Ministry agrees there's been an increase in demand for postpartum depression treatment. It says program operators are looking for ways to ease the pressure. Amelia Versteeg isn't sure the government understands the toll of wait times. A year after first asking for help, she's still in group therapy and seeing a psychiatrist at BC Women's.
I see someone or talk to someone on Zoom every 8 weeks between appointments because they are so backlogged. You just sort of take what you can get.
Her mental health has significantly improved, but access to services remains difficult.
And the itsy bitsy spider went up the spout again.
Belle Puri, CBC News, North Vancouver.
Hospitals in Northern Health are dealing with an overflow of patients. We now know 32 people from the north have had to be transferred to other health regions in this province. 26 of those 32 people were COVID-19 patients, and none of them were fully vaccinated. Overall, almost 2,000 people have tested positive for COVID in the last 3 days. 10 more people have died from the virus as the death toll creeps closer to 2,000. And there's mounting pressure for the province to make rapid testing available for schools. It comes as more and more kids in BC are testing positive, especially those under 12 not eligible for a vaccine yet. As Isabel Regam tells us, BC researchers have found that regular rapid testing could significantly reduce transmission in schools.
So that's the biggest concern from parents and from teachers I've heard is, why aren't we using them?
Surrey teacher Johanna feels the province was too slow to bring in an expanded mask mandate, and now they're being too slow to bring in rapid testing.
So many other jurisdictions have taken that step. So why are we like reacting rather than being proactive?
SFU researcher Paul Tupper is among a team that has been studying COVID transmission in schools. They found contact tracing was quite slow and ineffective, and that preventative rapid testing was far more effective.
In Germany, for example, they're testing children in some parts of Germany 2 or 3 times a week with rapid tests. And so if they get a positive result, then they intervene. I don't know if that's feasible for us, but there's certainly steps we could take in that direction.
While British Columbians can purchase kits on their own, it can come at a steep price, and there's no wide distribution of rapid tests in school communities. The latest data shows the federal government has provided BC with nearly 2.8 million rapid tests. Only 680,000, about a quarter, have been distributed, a sharp contrast to the greater rate of deployment in neighboring Alberta and Saskatchewan. On Friday, Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry was asked about the role of rapid testing in BC's response.
I think there's a role for that type of test, for at-home testing. Right now, though, what we're doing is making available the swish and gargle test to school-age kids.
Those gargle kits are PCR lab-based tests, which means results come in hours later. But they are more accurate than rapid tests, which only take minutes.
We know rapid tests are not 100% guarantees. We still have to be cautious, but that information is better than nothing.
I know it's really difficult for families to decide, whether their child's runny nose constitutes, having them stay home. And so I think that rapid testing could be used in a way to give people peace of mind.
The BC Teachers Federation says rapid testing is another layer of protection needed in schools. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Vancouver.
It's been nearly 2 months since the mandatory hotel quarantine for international air travelers ended, but the wait has done little to calm the controversy around the restriction. New data shows enforcement varied widely province to province, and as Susanna De Silva shows us, some who were fined for not staying in a hotel say they plan to fight back.
You see down here, $5,000.
When Michael Allen returned from a business trip in July, he says he refused a quarantine hotel because he had an empty house to go to. Bad enough he was fined, he says. Now he's frustrated not everyone received the same punishment.
The federal law means federal, right? The whole country.
CBC News reported in May that there was no evidence of fines being handed out to travelers landing in Montreal or Calgary.
We certainly hope that there will be a greater access to data that can reassure people that those fines are indeed being applied and enforced everywhere across the country.
Now that data is out and the enforcement isn't even close to being equal. More than 4,800 tickets issued in Toronto, 685 in Vancouver, but in Montreal, 3 cases were passed along to provincial prosecutors for possible fines. In Calgary, 0. When asked why, Ottawa said different legislation in Quebec and Alberta meant it was up to local officials to impose fines. Robert Smith plans to fight the ticket he got in Vancouver.
I wish we'd known. We would have gone through Calgary for sure. I hope that some judge sitting somewhere is going to realize this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Some experts think that is a possibility.
I certainly think it's worth raising these inconsistencies and letting the courts know that this wasn't a program that was sort of implemented fairly necessarily across the board.
Michael Allen says he's waiting for his day in court.
You have how many millions of dollars you are paying legal fees to collect a few $1,000,000, and for what? And it didn't do a damn thing. That's bureaucracy at its finest.
The Public Prosecution Service of Canada would only say it is committed to having the cases heard quickly and doesn't comment on potential costs. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, it's official. The province is bringing in a new law to bring bubble zones to BC. It's the government's attempt to protect places like hospitals and schools from protesters. Let's bring in our Tanya Fletcher for more on this. Tanya, what do we know so far?
Well, Anita, that update came on day 1 of the fall session at the legislature, and one of the headline pieces of legislation this sitting will be that bubble zone bill designed to protect, as you say, places like hospitals and schools from protesters. It all stemmed from recent protests in the past couple of of months province-wide that did turn aggressive in some cases. And these new bubble zones would prevent protesting within a certain distance of particular buildings or essential services. BC actually already has a no protest zone for abortion clinics. That law was passed in 1995 when there were aggressive protests at the time outside some clinics. And until now, the province had only suggested that legislation or perhaps regulation was a possibility for schools and hospitals. Now we know that a law will be coming later this sitting. And speaking of which, today marked the first time the chamber was full since the pandemic began. It was a packed house, fully masked, with nearly all 87 MLAs back for the first time in a year and a half. The legislature is following a COVID compliance plan guided by the provincial health officer.
Okay, and Tanya, we also heard an update on vaccine card compliance. So where's the province at with enforcement? Have any fines actually been handed out?
Yeah, well, so far a grand total of only 3 fines have been levied. So far, Government House Leader Mike Farnworth says bylaw officers are actively monitoring establishments, and any complaints are being forwarded to enforcement agencies like the police and WorkSafe BC to investigate.
There are those who think that the rules don't apply to them. The reality is that most restaurants and establishments are in fact following the rules. Enforcement, for example, for establishments or restaurants could be a $2,300 fine or the loss of the liquor license or potentially the business license.
Now, when he was asked why only 3 tickets handed out so far, he said each complaint has to be examined on a case-by-case basis, and he adds there will be more fines coming. Anita?
All right, Tanya Fletcher reporting tonight. Thanks, Tanya. Calgary mayoral candidate Kevin Johnston has been sentenced to 18 months behind bars for making racist, defamatory statements about a store owner despite being ordered to stop. Johnston was charged with contempt earlier this year. He publicly branded Ontario store owner Mohammed Faki a terrorist and a baby killer. The judge says he exhibited hate speech and, at its worst, targeting people solely because of their religion. The sentence comes just weeks after Johnston also pleaded guilty to a hate crime charge in Ontario for making anti-Muslim posts online. Johnston also faces criminal charges of assault and hate crimes here in BC and in Ontario. House prices are up across Metro Vancouver as demand continues to outpace supply. September sales were nearly 21% above the 10-year average for the same month. The benchmark price for all residential properties is just under $1.2 million. That's up almost 14% compared with September of last year, but less than a 1% rise compared to the previous month this summer. Market analysts say the higher prices are driven by an overall lack of supply when it comes to housing options. A vigil took place at Vancouver City Hall to mark the National Day of Action for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. The event is organized to raise awareness around those missing and unsolved cases across the country. First Nations matriarchs led those in attendance in recognizing the more than 4,000 who have been reported missing. Speakers included members from the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, the Squamish Nation, and family members impacted by the losses.
The national call to action is so important to our people. Everyone that you can see here today has been impacted by what's happened to our women and our children and the two-spirited.
Organizers say anyone wishing to show support can wear red or hang red dresses around your home. Well, would you scrap your vehicle for free transit, resting in the back lot, or sparkling new? If your vehicle runs on gas, you can trade it in for hundreds of dollars in transit fees. If you take up the offer, TransLink and Scrap It have a rebate worth $802. That's the same as 8 months on a single-zone adult pass or 14 months on a 3-zone concession pass. TransLink says it aims to help Metro Vancouver cut back greenhouse gases by 80% over the next 30 years and encourages public transportation to reduce congestion and the region's carbon footprint. And in Vancouver, city councillors are also looking at reducing emissions from cars on the road. Instead of incentives, a tax of sorts, targeting anyone buying a new gas-powered vehicle. Justin McElroy joins us live tonight. Justin, Council is considering all sorts of things when it comes to this, so take us through the proposals.
Yeah, it's a pretty complicated thing that's coming to Council tomorrow, but the important thing for people to know is that if they have a vehicle or are planning to, and they want to park it on streets overnight, they're probably going to have to spend more money. So let's take a look at a couple boards here, seeing what exactly Council is looking at. So 2 parts. Number 1, there's going to be a proposed new rate for any vehicles purchased with a model year 2023 and newer, $0 to $1,000 per year, depending on the type of vehicle you get. The 0 free ones will be all electric vehicles, as well as some hybrids, and it goes up to $1,000 a year for high-polluting new vehicles. But this only applies to places where there are parking permits. Now, the catch is, Council is also proposing extending where those permits are in the city from just a few places to literally the entire city. Now, during the daytime, if you take a look at the next board here, that's not going to change what happens for people. You can still park anywhere at any time for no fee if there's no parking meter in a normal street. However, at nighttime, any resident who wants to park on a street will have to pay an annual permit, $45 for most. You can apply for a $5 a year low-income discount. And visitors as well, if they have to park overnight in a different place, will have to pay $3. The city promises that there'll be some sort of app and that people can use to make sure that this works well. So it's a lot for Council to sift through. It can be a lot of money for people, especially if they don't have their own garage or private parking space. And they're hoping that this will incentivize people to not buy SUVs and the gas-guzzling vehicles going forward, but a lot for them to consider.
Yes, a lot to consider, and it's also very confusing, like you said. Glad we have you to help break it down. How likely is Council to pass these proposals?
Well, this is the big question. Council has been working on these proposals for more than 2 years now, since they passed a climate emergency, and have asked staff to try and find ways to incentivize people to not use the roads quite as much for cars. But some councillors aren't in favor of this proposal, arguing that it is unfair for people that can't park their car in a private garage.
Those residents who park in their driveways, park in garages, if you're lucky enough to have underground parking in your condo or in your rental building, then you're good. This doesn't affect you, no matter how polluting your vehicle is. But it does just affect people who do not have those benefits at the end of the day.
So Council is going to start talking about this tomorrow, but when they end up the actual vote, you know, sometimes they take 4 or 5 days to vote on a single building. So expect this to take a little bit of time before we know whether this is going to affect car owners or not.
All right, Justin, keep us posted. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here now. And Joe, I mean, today was good, but I can't go without acknowledging Sunday. Wow. Yesterday was so good.
It was a stunner. You're right. It was so lovely that we had at least one of the 2 weekend days, especially after such a soggy Saturday. Yeah, Sunday was delightful after we got through those morning showers. And this morning started off with those same beautiful high cirrus, some billowing cumulus as well, a beautiful sky. Now it's mainly overcast as we track the next rainmaker. But let me take you first to the current temperatures. The other trend we'll be watching over the next few days, along with rain, are cooler temperatures. 12 right now in through IVR will be below seasonal over the next couple of days. And here's the latest radar shot. Look at those green patches just crossing down from the northwest. You may start to feel those spits and spots in downtown Vancouver any minute now. That's in advance of the main system. For most of us, the rain won't really start for most of the lower mainland until early morning hours tomorrow. So pre-dawn, we'll see that rain move in. It's quite the front, and it's bringing the first snowfall to the Peace for early morning hours as well. I'll take you through the full forecast and those cooler temperatures coming up, Anita.
All right, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
As far as car collections go, Mike Hall in Tappan, British Columbia has a pretty unique one. 560 vintage cars in various states of repair, all spread out on a rural property north of Salmon Arm. But what do you do when your collection outgrows you and it becomes just too much to handle? CBC reporter Brady Strachan went out to Rust Valley to find out.
68 Dart. It's got the factory 5-on-4 disc brakes. It's
Mike Hall's mind is like an encyclopedia of vintage cars. For 45 years, he's been hauling them home to his property in the town of Tappan, an area known locally as Rust Valley.
Can you tell us how this came about? I'm a moron. How else do you end up with 600 cars? I don't know. As a kid, I always loved them. I bought 1, I bought 2, I bought 3, I bought 10, I bought 20. I mean, the last 4 properties I bought have been to move cars to. There'll be a guy jumping.
You might have seen Hall and his rusting collection on the reality TV show centered around his life, Rust Valley Restorers. The series chronicles Hall's obsession with cars and his reluctance to give them up.
We kind of tried to push him into an auction last year, and he wanted nothing to do with it. And this year, I think he finally woke up and realized, hey, I can't do this anymore.
On Saturday, Hall's Field of Dreams hit the auction block with more than 500 cars for sale.
I know I'm not going to get to them all. And if they go to good homes, and like I said, I don't own them, I've caretaken them. Well, time for somebody else to carry the torch.
People came from all over North America.
Hang on one sec. This guy's got money. I know he does.
Some made the journey to buy cars, and others just to see Hall's collection before it's broken up.
So, you know, we thought we'd come and mostly view the spectacle, but, you know,
we're
maybe something
hardcore car guys.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's what Mike is.
On auction day, the majority of Hall's cars find a buyer. Some go for a couple of $100s, others for tens of thousands.
Where are we at?
For Hall, it's a bittersweet moment, but old habits die hard. He's not out of the classic car business just yet.
I was supposed to keep 10, I ended up keeping 52. So basically, I still have a full deck to play with. Just don't have a full deck up here.
Brady Strachan, CBC News, Tappan, British Columbia.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. I'm your host, Anita Bathe, and if you're not already doing so, please know that you can watch our program live on our free app, CBC Gem. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. A month after Kabul was seized by the Taliban, the first Canadian journalist has returned to the city. We take you inside a changed Afghanistan next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Well, the annual Canadian Cancer Society's Run for the Cure was yesterday, and more than $9 million was raised across the country in the fight against breast cancer. As Colleen Jones shows us, one Halifax woman has been one of the top fundraisers for the last 20 years.
Bernice Arsenault is hard to miss. Bright pink. There's a courage button on her very pink hat. She survived breast cancer 2 decades ago, but her fight is to end breast cancer.
Going. Come on, Bet.
That's why she walks for 2 decades now. She's closing in on raising $300,000 in those 20 years. She doesn't take no for an answer.
I walk, I talk, and I knock. I ask anybody that I know, or, you know, just no matter where I'm at. I used to go to work. I go door to door in the neighborhood. I do online. I wasn't really keen on online because a lot of people don't answer you back, but I get mostly my funds from door to door.
Her cousin Sean is on the paths walking too.
Very persuasive. She is the most persuasive person I have ever met. She can get you to do anything. Anything. I don't think I've ever heard anybody tell Bernice no.
Lisa and her son Braden joined Bernice.
My mom passed away 3 years ago this January, and we used to do the walk with Bernice. So we come out every year.
Everyone here has a similar story.
I've lost so many people through breast cancer and cancer, so for me to be here today, it's an honor.
But it's Bernice's dogged perseverance that keeps her friends coming back year after year.
I don't know how many times she's been the top fundraiser. I know it's at least 5 or 6 times. She goes door to door. You know, she obviously it's a personal cause for her, but she's just, you can't say no to Bernice.
This year, to walk here in Africville for the 2nd year is extra special. Bernice grew up here. The past and the beauty inspires her.
That's us here, the buyers.
It's 20 years cancer-free for Bernice, almost $300,000 raised in total. She doesn't plan on stopping anytime soon.
Because 20 years ago today, I had breast cancer. Now I'm cancer-free, and I go out and I fundraise to help somebody else and try to get a world without breast cancer.
Colleen Jones, CBC News, Halifax.
Tonight, CBC is the first Canadian broadcaster back in Afghanistan. The country now enduring a tattered economy amid a fragile security situation. Just yesterday, there was another deadly suicide bombing outside a mosque. Susan Ormiston takes us inside Kabul and gives us a first look behind the veil of Taliban rule.
A Talib fighter, unflinching, loyal to his flag, guards a checkpoint outside Kabul's airport. It's at Abbey Gate, with its cruel reminders of the carnage just over a month ago when a suicide bomber killed nearly 200 desperate to get out. The gate now deserted. The road so quiet. A corner shopkeeper, Mohammed Shakir, says business here is the worst in 20 years. Calm comes at a cost. The security is good, everything is good, but there's no work. People can't make money. 6 weeks since the Taliban rolled into Kabul, the Afghan capital is whitewashed in black and white. Their flags everywhere, political swag on sale. A back entrance to the U.S. Embassy is painted over. Young entrepreneurs hedge their bets. A Talib flag on one hand, on the other, the Afghan one. Taliban soldiers appear to be settling into their power, less twitchy, some arrogant victors, but still unable to manage this country on the verge of economic collapse. A new flea market shows the strain. Some bring their own possessions just to raise cash, like Hamadullah and his carpets. I want to sell this stuff because at home I don't have any food. The Taliban is good, he says. Before, people robbed and stole, that's over. But the problem now, no work. Rahima's family, all teachers, are out of jobs. We are all full of stress. In my whole family, our future seems destroyed. And still, the threat of violence, a bomb at the Edga Mosque just yesterday, shrapnel scars and bloody gutters, an attack targeting the Taliban. The suicide bomber was right here amongst a crowd of mourners at a top Taliban family funeral. When he detonated his vest, 8 people were killed. It is the biggest attack in Kabul since the Americans left at the end of August. Can you keep the country safe? I can assure you, he says, we'll improve security here. Everything will be resolved. But last night, as top Taliban leaders rushed to a hospital emergency, the threat facing this country was on full display. A guard who was 3 meters from the bomber, his sneakers bloodied, showed us graphic photos of the bodies. Who did it, we asked. We have 2 enemies, he told us, America and Daesh, or ISIS. Whoever attacks us will attack back. So overnight, the Taliban say they hunted down an ISIS hideout in Kabul and destroyed it, as Afghans wondered whether the Taliban can hold this country.
That's Susan Ormiston reporting from Kabul, Afghanistan tonight. Elsewhere, the farmers' protest in India has turned deadly. For more than a year now, farmers have rallied against changes that removed price guarantees for their crops. And as Salima Shivji tells us, over the weekend, things took a turn for the worse.
The chaos captured on shaky video. Violent clashes, a flare-up of tensions already simmering between India's farmers and authorities. In the aftermath, increased security and searing questions about what exactly happened. As the victims' families mourn their loss, 9 people reported dead, including 4 farmers who were hit and 3 members of the ruling BJP political party who were pulled out of the car and attacked. There are conflicting reports. Farmers say the car, owned by the son of a junior minister in the Indian government, deliberately ran down protesters. The politician and his son dispute that and claim the farmers targeted the convoy. Whatever the cause, the result is clear. Protests multiplying in different states across the country. Opposition leaders barred from entering the region, internet in the town where the violence erupted shut down as tensions rise. Fueling the farmers' protest movement, the focal point of which has been entrenched along the border of India's capital for nearly a year now. Thousands of India's farmers convinced the new agricultural laws will destroy livelihoods, versus Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government adamant the reforms are needed.
The farmer communities have...
This analyst has been following the movement closely and believes every act of violence associated with policing of the protests bolsters their cause.
Everyone's watching very carefully. And YouTube, social media, although the mainstream like corporate media does not bring out those messages, but YouTube and other platforms are telling farmers of every atrocity.
And the farmers show no signs of backing down. Will target the leaders of the ruling party, this farmer says, in upcoming state elections, even protest in front of their homes, for as long as we have to. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, if you're one of the billions of people who use Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, you may have noticed they were all offline today for hours. It was a worldwide outage, and coincidence or not, it happened just hours after an insider went public with shocking allegations that Facebook is deliberately promoting harmful content just to make money.
Around the world, Facebook users were greeted with this, an error message telling them the site was offline. Facebook-owned Instagram and WhatsApp went down as well. That spinning wheel, a sign of trouble. A Facebook executive had to use the rival platform Twitter to apologize. His only explanation, we're experiencing networking issues.
It does seem like there was a DNS issue, which stands for domain name systems. It might be that records were manipulated, deleted. I'm assuming it's user error.
At Facebook in California, some employees weren't even able to get in because their digital badges stopped working. Overseas, WhatsApp serves as the main communication tool for millions, and this outage would have meant 6 hours of stress for many people and businesses.
It could well be a problem at the heart of the technological engine that runs all those servers.
The technical meltdown coming on the heels of this damning interview with a former Facebook product manager.
Facebook has realized that if they change the algorithm to be safer, people will spend less time on the site, they'll click on less ads, they'll make less money.
Frances Haugen revealed she's the one who leaked internal documents suggesting the company knew Instagram could be toxic for teen girls, and Facebook had a big anti-vaccine problem on its platform. She says Facebook helped fuel that Capitol Hill riot by scaling back misinformation filters set up for the U.S. election. Facebook says its internal research was mischaracterized.
We do it precisely so that we can work out, in the minority of cases where people are not having a good experience on our platforms, what we can do.
The whistleblower is set to testify for a U.S. congressional panel on Tuesday. Already for Facebook, this week is off to a bad start. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada is now seeing an average of 50 COVID-19 deaths per day, and this is the highest it's been since last spring when fully vaccinated Canadians were at less than 3%. Bonnie Allen tells us about the losses now growing on a scale impossible to imagine.
35-year-old Jennifer Rosebluff Thomas was 29 weeks pregnant and very sick when she was admitted to an Edmonton ICU in late August.
The sad thing was my sister wasn't vaccinated.
Her sister, Carol Charles, was able to reach her in hospital by video chat.
I just told her, don't worry. I said, I'm going to see the kids. I'll be there, don't worry. She was shaking her head, yes. She had the oxygen mask on her face. And she was shaking her head, yeah. And she was crying, and she, I could tell she was scared.
Rosebluff Thomas was one of more than 20 pregnant COVID patients in Alberta hospitals over the past 2 months, all unvaccinated, despite national recommendations.
The vaccine is safe and it's life-saving.
Obstetrician Dr. Stephanie Cooper has had to deliver several premature babies from infected mothers. She didn't treat Rosebluff Thomas, but says generally medical teams want to keep a fetus inside the womb as long as possible.
If we think potentially a pregnant woman is not going to make it, then, we decide that, we should deliver the baby, even if it is very premature, because we are very concerned that both the baby and the mom, may not make it.
That's what happened with Rosebluff Thomas.
When they were doing the emergency C-section, the nurse called me and told me that they were doing it to save her so she could get oxygen into her lungs.
The mother of 9 never regained consciousness. She died 4 days later, never having held her newborn daughter, who survived.
It's very difficult to take care of someone who's pregnant and is on life support. And it is challenging both from an emotional level, but also from a medical point of view, because you are oftentimes caring for more than one person.
It's real, and it kills, especially if you're not vaccinated.
Carol Charles remembers how much her sister loved her children and says she would never have wanted to leave them without a mother. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan.
His popularity among teachers and parents may be unmatchable. Now the superintendent of BC's largest and most diverse school district is retiring. What he's leaving behind is next.
Investors, stock promoters, brokers, they're all saying the same thing about Vancouver's stock exchange these days. They're saying the thrill is gone. 19 straight losses in Vancouver's stock index and a 3-year record that's not much better. Critics say the VSE's colorful reputation may finally be catching up to it. Ian Hannamansing has that story.
Everyone who watches stocks on the Vancouver Exchange is used to a roller coaster ride. But these days, the VSE seems headed in only one direction, straight down.
This one's more prolonged than other lousy markets that I've seen. This one's lasting a long time.
The VSE index is a gauge of how stocks are performing on the market. 3.5 years ago, the index was over the 2,000 mark. During the crash of October '87, it plummeted to about 1,500. But while major markets around the world rebounded, the VSE continued to slump. And today, another in a string of record lows, 587. Some brokers admit these are tough times for people who deal with the VSE.
Using the car a little bit less and pinching pennies a little bit more and vacationing closer to home, things like that.
Many market watchers say that part of the reason for this slump is that the most important promoter on the VSE is in limbo. Last year, Murray Pezim single-handedly created a small boom on the exchange. Now he faces a possible ban from trading after allegations he broke securities regulations. But longtime critics say the record lows are due to more than the fate of one man. They say it's the result of a rotten reputation, of weak securities rules and poor enforcement.
It's a recognition that for years the VSE has been offering the public investor a lousy product and they've just stopped buying.
The stock exchange says it's worked very hard to clean up that image, but it may be about to get battered once again. Tomorrow night, an American television network is planning to air what's being described as an expose of shady actions by some promoters on the exchange. It's a telecast that many people here are waiting for anxiously. Ian Hannamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Home sales in Metro Vancouver are still well above the 10-year average, but the number of new listings on the market is down. Normally, supply and demand would have an impact on the cost of housing, and while prices are higher, the increase is not that significant.
We like to keep our wait list under 3 weeks. At one point in June, we were at about 13 weeks. So that's not ideal.
Postpartum mental health support in BC is getting harder to come by. There's been a spike in demand for services during the pandemic as new moms are isolated more than ever before. Advocates worry what will happen if wait times don't improve. And we've now learned 32 people have had to be moved from hospitals in BC's north to other parts of the province. That's because hospitals have been pushed to the brink and are overrun. The number of patients in ICU overall is also up slightly. The superintendent of BC's largest school district is retiring. Some would argue Jordan Tinney is one of the most popular district leads in the province, and he's been praised by staff and parents for how he's handled the COVID-19 crisis. He joins us now. Welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
Mr. Tinney, it's not often that teachers and parents have nothing bad to say about their school district head, but it seems with you, we're hard-pressed to find any criticism, really. What do you make of that?
Oh, I'm sure there are critics out there for sure. You know, and anyone who does the lead role, you're always struggling to do the very best you can, and you're never making everyone happy. But, you know, I'm pleased that really it's such a positive response. It's just great to know that, you know, you try to make a difference and hopefully made a little bit of a difference out there.
Well, it seems like communication, having that open style of communication has been really important for you, and that's what a lot of teachers have told us. So why has that been such a priority?
I think particularly in the last couple of years, you know, the pandemic has been such an incredible ride. We never thought it would last 1 year, let alone 2 and 3, and now we're into wave 4. And I think people just are often looking for clear, simple answers. Just tell us what the rules of the game are so that we know where we stand. And so I think trying to find a way to answer those questions in a way that makes sense for the public, again, whether they agree or disagree, at least having some clarity is helpful. And I think that's resonated well for the public throughout the pandemic.
And what is something that you think needs to be improved upon or needs to change within Surrey schools? How can the district be even better?
Oh, lots of ways. You know, our job will never be done. We in Surrey, we're a tremendously multicultural district. How do we continue to communicate effectively with such a diverse population where, you know, a huge number of homes do not have English as a first language at home? We're just about to publish a report that we did on the spring where we spoke to close to 500 people around dealing with issues of racism or discrimination in the district, and looking at how can we do better to make sure everybody feels that they belong and they're welcome and they see school as a safe and caring place. You know, when I think about our enormous capital needs, when I think about the coming mandate around childcare in schools, the list is endless. We can always do better.
And what's your advice for the person who fills your shoes, but also everybody else working within the Surrey School District?
You know, I think the advice would be, you know, I always think no matter where people are coming from, there are always points of agreement. There are always ways in which you can agree together, even though you may have different directions you're going to go at the end of the day. Just listen to people, hear what they have to say, respect their viewpoint, and then try to find some common ground to move forward. You know, on the day when you think you got it right is the day that you should worry the most. So I think just take it easy, take it slow, and do the very best you can and work hard. That's all you can really do.
Absolutely. Great advice for anyone. Jordan Tinney is the outgoing superintendent of the Surrey School District. Congratulations, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Take care.
After a quiet year on local ski hills, people are lining up to get their passes. Why they are crossing their fingers ahead of the season. Next. And at 6:44, you are looking at a live look at the volcano in La Palma. The crater has collapsed, spilling lava down the slopes and escalating an already dramatic situation. Johanna has the latest next.
early fall in southern Canada, and this monarch butterfly is waiting for a tailwind. Her antennae sense a drop in pressure that tells her a cold front is pushing down from the north. She is going to ride these strong winds south all the way to Mexico. She rises up, looking for the steadiest winds. The wind propels her much faster than her tiny wing muscles ever could. She can easily cover 100 kilometers in a day. Her antennae sense wind direction. And she sets her course from the position of the sun. But how they find their way over 4,000 kilometers to this mountaintop in central Mexico is still a mystery. Especially because none of them has ever been here before. It was her great-grandmother who was part of the last monarch generation to see this forest. They cluster together for warmth in a type of hibernation, but in this state, they are vulnerable. A sudden gust spells disaster. They are too groggy to fly. But they've got to get back to the cluster before the deadly cold of night arrives. Vibrating her wings warms her a little. Just enough to give her the energy to climb the tree. Like a human trying to scale the CN Tower while half asleep. Finally, she can rest again.
Well, if you've been thinking about getting into winter sports, hurry hard. As the ski season approaches, demand for passes is growing during the pandemic. And as Janella Hamilton reports, some BC mountains are selling out much earlier than expected.
Whether it's wet and foggy or blanketed in fresh snow, exploring BC's mountain landscapes is proving to be popular during the pandemic.
Last year, we saw about a 40% increase in visitor numbers.
Kathy McCann has been skiing and snowboarding all her life and spends much of her winters at Mount Seymour.
It's just being out there in the fresh air and enjoying the mountains. And there is a feeling of safety, particularly during COVID, that I think I've enjoyed it even more.
McCann is the executive director of the Fraser Valley Snowboard Club. She says her students were encouraged to buy passes in May.
People learned, I think, from last year that things were selling out. If we're going to snowboard and this COVID's going to continue, then we want to get our season passes as early as possible.
And if you haven't already secured your season passes to Mount Seymour or any of the other mountains in BC, you may want to act fast.
Early bird passes went on sale in February, and they sold out at the beginning of August. Typically, they don't normally sell out until the end of September.
Big White Ski Resort in Kelowna has also seen an increase in demand. Before the pandemic, the resort issued about 16,000 passes a year. That number has now grown to 20,000.
We have a lot of snowbirds that go south and come back in March for spring skiing, and we just noticed that our Club 65 members tripled last year.
Although the snow has yet to fall, people at Mount Seymour are already getting ready to gear up and hit the slopes.
It feels like a safer way to see friends. You know, you can be outside, you can spend more, there's more space to be away from other people.
The Cypress Park sold out in, I think, 4 hours, the special deal. So it was pretty astonishing.
McCann says she isn't surprised this season's passes are going quickly.
I know that I've gotten emails from some parents saying that they can't wait to get on the mountain. The kids are all looking at their gear and waxing their boards and getting ready for the season. So it's pretty cool.
She says her club members are counting down the days until they can start shredding, which could be in a matter of weeks. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here now, but before we get to our weather and, I don't know, maybe some snow, some fireworks from that volcano in La Palma, what's happening there?
Yeah, let's go. Before we get to the snow, let's go to the molten lava side of natural disaster. It's early morning for the Spanish Canary Island. You're watching the La Palma eruption live, and this just always seems to be when we get the most amazing footage for our show live. And you can see the lava continuing to erupt over the past 24 hours. The sort of caldera or the crater where the lava is erupting from collapsed. So even more lava pouring out. The lava flow, which locals are calling a dam, widened by about 300 meters. So many more buildings being taken out, over 1,000 buildings destroyed at this point. So far, everyone has been able to get out because of those evacuation orders being put out well ahead of time. And the ash that is being bolstered up into the atmosphere by upwards of about 5,300 meters. So far, that is staying also away from communities. Just a quick look at the video from earlier in the day so you can get a sense of how close these eruptions are to communities. 90% of the island is untouched by this volcano, but for the almost 10,000 people that have been evacuated, this is very much a real disaster pushing through those homes. So we'll keep you posted, very much still active. And scientists working on this particular volcano say there is a lot of lava still to come from the plumbing underneath. Okay, we promised you from fire to ice, so let's get to the snowfall warnings here in British Columbia. The piece under a special weather statement, not quite a snowfall warning, 10 to 15 centimeters over the next 24 hours. That is as that cold air descends down across central and northern BC, mixing with the shot of moisture that we're all getting thanks to this low pressure system. Notice the purples in the forecast model. That's the snow. So just pausing this tomorrow afternoon, we're going to see a lot of snow for the first time this season for many communities. I say a lot, maybe just a couple centimeters at most. But Prince George starting your day off with some snow. This is what's bringing snow to the Peace region. Not out of the question. As we head into Wednesday morning, we may see some wet snow at the top of Seymour, Grouse, Cypress. We'll keep watching that snow level. It's very close, not a lot, but as we were just talking about, we're all geared up for the winter season. You can see that snow changing to rain in the forecast for Prince George and Williams Lake with afternoon highs just around 4 or 5. We're going to see temperatures come down for us too, Anita. We've got a very chilly forecast ahead over the next couple of days. There it is. Leave you with a 5-day forecast with some glimmer of hope on Thursday.
Oh, that is chilly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready.
We're ready. We can do it.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, just think about how many pumpkin pies you could make. So how much did David Chan's squash named Papa Bear weigh in at? That's next.
From a very young age, the best thing in life was to get on my bicycle and go for a ride. As I got older, and of course I grew taller, even an extra large size was too small 99% of the time. And when I had the means, eventually, I was able to order myself a custom-built bicycle that was made just to fit me. I remember swinging a leg over that bicycle, and it just fit me so perfectly. And then a few years after that, I ended up getting a second custom bicycle built for me. And I remember taking a good look at it, and I thought, I think this is something that I could do. All the custom bikes I build are bespoke. They're made with the customer's measurements, built to fit them perfectly. That's where things start, is that conversation about how are you going to use the bicycle? What specific features do you want on it? You know, I want to see the person and understand sort of their size and maybe their strength, and then the bike is going to be tailored to that. What's printed here was the sort of the first version of what I was going to build for this customer. The customer came back and said, I would like to actually have a bent seat tube. And I would like the seat stays to be dropped for aesthetic reasons. And I was able to transfer that to the model itself. This ultimately will be the bike that this person gets. So I export this model, and then I can check all my clearances in here, make sure that bike frame that I'm building is going to have clearance for the tires that the customer wants. There's about somewhere between 40 and 60 hours that goes into building one. And so I try and just limit that to one a month. And what that's done is it's created a waiting list that stretches out until June of 2022. There are people that contact me and they're put off by the waiting list. And so my goal this winter is to have a batch of frames ready to go in specific sizes, and then people can just take those away. And this is a bike that I use for bicycle polo. The handlebar has been cut shorter on one side than the other because you're typically only riding it with one hand. This was a bike built a few years ago. The handlebars are copper so that they would start to patina over time. Even the paint, I put the paint on quite thin with the idea that it would start to rust up as time went on and create a patina as well. This bike over here, it's just clear coated, so you can see the truth in materials, the truth in construction. Working with metal and building bicycles, there's a real tactile piece to that, and then a sense of accomplishment. I mean, you create this thing from, just from the components, like right from the tubing, and then you turn that into a machine that's able to do all these great things, and that has a real sense of accomplishment for me. At the end of the day, you hand over this piece and say, well, here, I created this thing for you. Now go and enjoy it and write your own story with it.
Okay, here's one way to start off the autumn season, a giant pumpkin competition. As Beneat Braich reports, one BC farmer has set a new record with his gigantic gourd.
Record has been set for BC's heaviest pumpkin, a feat for Richmond's David Chan that has been 12 years in the making.
This is the most excited I've ever been, so winning is great.
Chan and his jumbo gourds were part of the annual Giant Pumpkin Weigh-Off. His precious plant family, named Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear, were grown outside and then later covered with a temporary greenhouse.
They really love the heat, so that's probably one reason why it got so big.
Big is an understatement. Papa Bear, winner of the show, came in at just over 1,900 pounds and is the new record holder in the province. It's no easy task. Taking care of the family, there's lots of nurturing.
I've been watering them 6 times a day, or a total of 200 gallons of water per plant.
Chan got his first seeds 40 years ago from a giant pumpkin farmer on the other end of the country.
I wrote a letter to Howardale, Nova Scotia, and I got a reply in 1 week.
Dill sent over some seeds called Atlantic Giants, and ever since, it's been a hobby for Chan.
And everybody laughs in my backyard, right? So it's just a fun thing to do, and my garden is my gym. Keeps the weight off.
At his last competition, Chan's pumpkin fell a few hundred pounds light. But this year, Chan's even earned an esteemed pumpkin champion jacket for growing the 3 pumpkins weighing over 4,000 pounds in total.
I think this is the first time I've really been excited about growing pumpkins.
The annual event drew in 9 other farmers, half of their treasured pumpkins weighing over 1,000 pounds.
But it's fun. It's a 6-month-long gamble. it's just a weird hobby. Like it's something that goes along with, I guess, my education.
Treat agricultural land as a positive thing. And it's just a good way to connect with kids for future generations moving forward.
Enthusiastic spectators watched in awe.
I like to see each pumpkin's different.
There are so many shapes and big, and I like the colors on them.
And what's done with these after the weigh-in? This one is being donated to Ronald McDonald House. Some are gifted or even fed to farm animals. And for BC's champion...
Well, it's like anybody else. We just carve them up and put them on the driveway.
Until next year, where Chan will yet again plant another gargantuan gourd. Benit Brach, CBC News, Langley.
I still think Johanna and I have a chance next year. Here's hoping. Fingers crossed. Thanks for watching our show. Good night.